I forgot to bring that sheet, but July of 2017 was the first fail. And we did as per our permit.
Let me get you to really talk up.
We did another test, a follow-up test to the failure in August of 2017. That also failed. We passed the next test, but we had another failure in March of this year, 2018. These are whole effluent toxicity tests that in the ones in question, that besides failures on E. coli. But the whole effluent toxicity tests are where we send our effluent out to an independent laboratory in Texas, bioaquatic, and they test this to see how well smaller organisms such as algae and a type of water flea will reproduce in our water and will live and thrive. And we failed on the algae. The other parameters were borderline, but the algae in this test is kind of a canary in the coal mine. It's like, hey, these guys didn't reproduce. And we had not experienced these kind of failures in the past while I was working at the plant.
Was this the first time, so this is a year ago, is this the first time you started noticing test failures?
Yes.
And what
yes.
is, in your opinion, what was causing those failures?
The chlorination that was being used at the plant.
I see. Explain to us in lay terms and as briefly as you can how this plant operates. This is a chemical-free plant, is that correct?
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
Designed that way.
Correct.
It is a biological organisms.
Absolutely.
And when it's working, there's never any smell.
No, if this plant is operating properly, there is not a smell. The most that you will smell is an earthy smell, a compost smell.
Mm-hmm. So what happens when you put chlorine, and how much of it has been put in, and how is it put in? Is it just thrown in the water or what?
Initially, that's how it was. It was actually bottles of household bleach without a real regulated dosing system. From the household bleach without a dechlorination at the end of this process. That's how it was started. Then we went to hyperchloride. Actually, pails bought at Ace Hardware here locally, and that was used to dose the basin, the surge basin, and then the water from the surge basin, of course, runs through the UV channel. Then it was determined by the grade 3 and his operator that
the grade 3 is the person who runs this plant.
He is on record with ADEQ as the lead at this plant.
What prompted the origin of putting chlorine into the system? What prompted that?
As I understand it, it was an attempt to get a hold of compliance. We were not passing our E. coli tests. The water was not coming out clean. And this was an attempt on their part to clean the water up before it was discharged. And the testings we were failing, this was an attempt to clean that up.
Okay, explain to us, let's backtrack just a bit. What is your job here?
My job here, I am the lab director, and I am in charge of all compliance issues, federal reporting, compliance testing, process control testing. I provide the numbers to the operators. When we do the process control, I provide numbers to them to help them effectively manage the plant process.
So it's your work that revealed that there was a problem to begin with.
Absolutely, yes.
And what would have been the correct response to that problem?
There should have been an alarm on their end that we should figure out what's going on in the biological process, and that we have a standard operating procedure to manage and mitigate problems as they arise. And I don't know where the thinking twisted to let's just chlorinate. Our lead operator used to work at Mule Gulch back when that was the operating plant for the city of Bisbee, and that plant used chlorination. And it may have been just a pattern of what he'd done in the past. Mm-hmm. However, it violates our permit, our aquifer protection permit.
Now, why does the state or the federal government have an issue with you using chlorine here?
Our plant is not designed for it. As far as the equipment we use, our pumps, our UV channel, none of the equipment in this plant is designed to handle the detrimental aspects of chlorination. You need a special type of plant to do that. And when this plant was commissioned for Bisbee, it was to be a non-chemical disinfection process. And that's why we use the UV lights. This was state-of-the-art at the time. And chlorination, as we all know, brings its own set of problems. You must dechlorinate before you put this chemical into the environment. It is harmful to all living organisms from bacteria on up. And that's why they use it to disinfect in some plants, because it will kill these pathogens.
Okay. So your testing revealed about a year ago that there were problems, that the water, it wasn't that long ago, I think, that they pretty much said you could drink this water.
Correct.
That came out of here a year or two ago, that they had tested it, and somebody I heard said that it was better than bottled water, it was better than the tap water, you could drink it. I mean, you may not want to, but you could.
Right.
So what happened then?
I think it was, what happened was that the grade 3 operator, when he started, then we started seeing a bunch of problems. We were, initially, I was reporting, and I report my results accurately to the federal government and the state government, that we were running into a lot of problems with our E. coli testing. We had a bunch of problems, dings in the reporting, and that actually set up red flags at ADEQ and brought them down here for an unscheduled inspection and to go over all of these results that I had sent in. That is what initially got the ball going, is that, all it is that I will report honestly.
Well, now, was there chlorine being used when they came here?
No, it was after. Let me back up. That is something I would have to correlate the dates on, Chuck.
Okay.
To be honest and to be sure.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not. I want to be clear on that.
All right. So
it's in that time frame.
Okay. So what happened was, about a year ago, or maybe a little longer, your testing revealed that the plant wasn't operating correctly.
Correct.
And that the last thing, not to put any words in your mouth, but the last thing you'd want to do to respond to that situation is by adding chemicals, much less adding chlorine.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And this chlorine was just, it's just added to where in the system?
Yes. In our surge basin. We have 2 basins that are reactors that handle the inflow of the sewage water, and that's where our biological process goes on. From those 2 basins, we declant or discharge clear water into a middle basin. It's a surge basin. That's where our clear water is aerated and then dosed out through the UV channel for disinfection. The chlorine was added to the surge basin where the clear water was just decanted in, and allowed to sit in there for a certain amount of time as a dosing, and then discharged into the UV channel. And this chlorine water was discharged through very expensive pumps to get it through into the UV channel. And as records will show, we have had more repairs and more replacements of equipment at this plant in the last year than we'd had in the 3 years before that I know of, and possibly even further. And as we all know, chlorine damages seals and pumps. If these pumps aren't designed to handle chlorine, it damages UV systems.
And it has done that.
And it has done that.
Okay, and it's costing the taxpayers money.
Yes, it is.
To replace these parts.
Yes. Tens of thousands of dollars.
I see. That isn't even really budgeted?
No. We have our budget for maintenance is based on prior years,
Right.
what we've needed, and maybe we'll add a little bit extra just in case because we came close this
Right.
year, that sort of thing. But as you know, our wastewater budget, as the citizens can check, has been decimated over this last year for repairs and replacement parts.
Okay. And so the ADEQ, the state, and EPA, the federal government, are they more concerned about if we destroy our wastewater treatment plant, or are they more concerned about the impact that using chlorine will have on the environment, or both?
Their first concern is the environment. And then they do have a concern just as being proactive. Hey, your system, because if our system goes down because of practices that we are doing, then that's going to directly affect the environment because we don't have the equipment that's up and running like it should be to do the job of cleaning that water before it goes out into our environment.
What is your biggest fear right now?
That it's continuing.
Mm-hmm.
And we are not discharging clean water. That the drinkable, beautiful water that we did have, the clear water that we were proud of, is not here. It's still it's not here at this
When was the last time you conducted a test?
I conducted a test yesterday. I pulled an E. coli sample yesterday. It needs to incubate for 24 hours, so I'm not going to know that results till I'm back on shift.
Tell me about the removal of chlorine from the premises in the last week. Describe it, how much there was of it, and tell me why it was here, and if under normal circumstances there's ever any reason to have chlorine on the premises to begin with. So fill me in there.
Sure. We had on site up until last Friday, we had empty buckets, 45-pound bucket size of chlorine granules and dechlorination tablets, and a full bucket of 45-pound of chlorine granules, and another full bucket of dechlorination tablets were on site, plus several bottles of household bleach. And on last Friday, city employees came to the plant and removed all of the empty buckets and all of the full buckets of chlorine. All chlorine, even the bottles of household bleach, were removed from the site and are supposedly stored elsewhere so that there is no chlorine on site, visible chlorine. And there is no reason to have chlorine at this plant. This is there is no reason. We have plenty of cleaning things that are not harmful to the environment here or to people. There is no, in my opinion, there's absolutely no reason to have chlorine on this site at all, from household bleach to pool shock, and that's some of the empty barrels that we had this kind of chlorination. It's never been on site before the last year and a half, and we've never had a need for it or use for it, and it shouldn't be here per our permit. It's not allowed.
So what will happen now that there's no chlorine here? There's no chlorine here to be dosed into the system, if you will.
Correct.
So if the tests continue to fail, what's next?
Normally in the it's like what's causing the failure? Is there something wrong in the system? It should be a process, an investigation with the operators. What's going on? What's happening? How can we define we have had 3 major fails in the last week. Okay, so what are we doing? What do we need to do better? So after that, though, it gets reported. I report it to ADEQ. If the situation doesn't rectify itself, they'll come down here. Let's see what's going on. They do their own investigation process. We can, from there, we can get a notice of violation. And this all is for the city of Bisbee, a notice of violation. We'll have a certain amount of time to correct that. If we don't correct it, it goes to consent order. and then fines, and possibly felony charges. To violate your permit knowingly and willfully is actually listed as a felony charge.